Sonny Bill Williams, the New Zealand rugby star, is making his return to a professional boxing ring in a heavyweight contest against Chauncy Welliver, billed for the end of January. Sonny Bill Williams is 6-0. His last fight was against Franz Botha, the faded sort of heavyweight. Now, I watched that fight with interest, and Sonny Bill Williams, clearly being a young man, clearly being a pro rugby player, he brings with him certain attributes such as athleticism, mobility. I can't question these things. But what was evident in that Botha fight was not that he hadn't been well schooled and well trained. Obviously he's got money, he's got connections, etc. But just that, to my eye, boxing didn't look to be in his blood. What he had to do in a fight didn't look instinctive to me. It looked like something, when he was hit, he looked like he didn't know what to do. It wasn't the kind of guy who's been punched and it's happened so many times. He knows how to move, he knows how to defend. So I kind of saw him freeze at times in that Botha fight. I thought there were other weaknesses to his game as well. He's a big guy, he's an athletic guy, he's a rangy guy, but I didn't think his power looked anything too special. I thought when he got put on his back foot, he was awkward going backwards. He didn't know what to do. I thought he was open defensively, and as I've already mentioned, I didn't think he knew what to do when he was being hit. So I actually made a mental note of that fight at the time, because I thought Sonny Bill Williams, big celebrity, sort of big brand behind him. You never know, you may see him in a fight one day and it may be worth placing a bet on the other guy, because he might be favourite and the bookies might have him sort of short priced because of who he is and how well known he is, etc. So I sort of made a note at the time that he may be a guy worth following from a gambling perspective. Not that I'm much of a gambler, but I just thought there might be a bit of an opportunity with him here. There were just weaknesses to his game. I mean, in that fight, basically, look, clearly the guy's athletic and fit. He plays professional rugby, but I think rugby fitness and boxing fitness is something very, very different. And round 9, round 10, against what can only be described as a middle-aged and obese opponent, he looked like he was suffering for stamina. He didn't have that boxing stamina, that boxing fitness, that boxing instinct that's built up by spending a lifetime devoted to the sport. Now, Chauncy Welliver's an interesting opponent. My gut instinct is that Team Sonny Bill Williams have probably picked the right moment to fight Chauncy Welliver, because Welliver has looked awful in his last couple of fights that I've seen. Now, let's not forget, as recently as October, November time, Welliver was suggested as a sort of legitimate and meaningful fight for heavyweight contender Lucas Brown. Now, in that fight, he sustained an eye injury, which meant the fight was stopped early. I did watch that fight, but I thought Welliver looked pretty terrible. Physically, his conditioning is among the worst you'll see in the heavyweight division. Reminiscent perhaps of Andy Ruiz after a particularly heavy Christmas. But one thing I would say about Welliver is he's kind of got that fitness and that stamina whereby he can go rounds despite the fact he looks absolutely terrible. As recently as a few weeks ago, he went an 8-round distance, losing every round to Alexander Ustinov. Against Ustinov, his punch output stats were pretty terrible. Again, he looked, outrageous in terms of the shape he came to the ring in. So my gut instinct is that Sonny Bill Williams may have caught this guy at the right time, because he seems to be on the slide. I think he's coming off 3 back-to-back losses. He, as I say, is very, very out of shape, and the way he's getting through seems to be by low output. So I'm not suggesting that we all run down to the bookmakers or run down to your gambling site of choice and place your life savings on Chauncy Welliver. purely because he hasn't shown us enough recently. But what I would say is I think he's a very, very dangerous opponent for Sonny Bill Williams. As I say, Welliver, this fight is happening 4 or 5 weeks down the line. So Welliver's actually getting time to prepare here. He's getting a bit of warning. That Ustinov fight, I remember he wasn't the originally intended, fighter. He was a sort of late replacement opponent. I don't remember the specifics of the Lucas Brown fight, I'm afraid, but you're giving Welliver here, who's known for his poor conditioning, a chance to have at least some preparation for a fight, which could be a relevant factor. Now, what I would say, as I already remarked, is I don't think Sonny Bill Williams has a lot of power. He didn't seem to be hurting Franz Botha, who was the first sort of experienced boxer he'd been in with. Now, if we look at Welliver, I know he got retired in round 5 against both Billy Wright and Lucas Brown, but both of those were supposedly due to injury. And if we look at the pick of his form, he went the distance against Alexander Ustinov, December 2014, about 2 weeks ago. In 2012, he went 10 rounds and 12 rounds, and the 12-round fight is interesting. It's against Sherman Williams, who we actually saw fight Joseph Parker recently, and Welliver lost that fight, but he lost it by a majority decision. One of the judges scored it a draw, and 2 of them scored it 7 rounds to 5, Sherman Williams. So I'm not going to suggest I watch that fight, but that's interesting, because that suggests that Welliver has a level of capability to relatively recently not only go 12 rounds, but also to be competitive in that fight and to win 5 or 6 rounds against an experienced, semi-capable operator like Sherman Williams. So I think he does pose some sort of threat to Sonny Bill Williams. As I say, looking at this, if Welliver stayed the distance against Ustinov, you wouldn't expect him to have any problem, against, staying the distance against a fighter like Sonny Bill. Because I don't think Sonny Bill has got the experience, the jab, or the sort of power as a fighter like Ustinov. I don't think Ustinov is too good, but he certainly operated several levels above anything that Sonny Bill Williams has showed so far in the ring. And I think there are similarities between Chauncy, Welliver and Franz Botha. They're both experienced guys, they're both out of shape, but Chauncy Welliver, he's only 31 years old, and he's had 55 wins in the ring compared to only 10 losses. So I know he's particularly overweight at the minute. I know he's on a bad streak. But he's 55 wins for 10 losses, so he wins more than he loses, and he's got certain likeable traits. And the guys he's been losing to, Ustinov, Lucas Brown, Billy White, these more recent losses, these are a level of opposition a bit higher than Sonny Bill Williams. I'm interested to see how many rounds that this is over, because of his 10 losses, only 3 of those have been by stoppage. And as I say, I think he got stopped by Odlaner Salis, but the other 2 were sort of injury, swollen eye, hurt arm, that kind of thing, as opposed to actually being KO'd. So he's a very, very durable guy. I think this one will go the distance. He certainly can stay the distance against someone like Alexander Ustinov very recently. And Sonny Bill Williams is giving us concerns, in the Franz Botha fight. I don't know whether Welliver today is going to have big enough power, big enough punching output, or big enough desire to actually get the job done. Having said that, he's got time to prepare, and as I say, relatively recently he's been passed off as a semi-respectable opponent for a headline act like Lucas Brown. Well, that certainly goes out the window. That kind of payday, that kind of money goes out the window if you lose to Sonny Bill Williams. He won't be able to be used in that kind of capacity, by like a credible youngster like Odlaner Salis, or a credible contender by Lucas Brown if he's getting blown out by the celebrity rugby player. So he needs to win to keep his place in the division. He's got time to prepare. He's not going to have problems with Sonny Bill Williams' power. And I think if he can jag Sonny Bill Williams late and off any sort of offensive output, put Williams on his back foot, work on Williams' defence, see what happens when Sonny Bill Williams actually takes one on the chin, I think Welliver is a live outsider in this fight, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if um, he was competitive, just because I see Sonny Williams is very, very flawed and lacking the sort of depth of boxing experience and technical sort of capability and pedigree that he's going to need to compete at a top level. Clearly Welliver doesn't represent the top level, but he represents a higher level than anything Sonny Williams has fought so far. So we shall see. Let me know your thoughts on this fight. It'll be one that I'm sure will make the newspapers, with Sonny Williams being who he is. As I say, gut instinct is they have picked Welliver at the right time. If they picked him 2 or 3 years ago, I'd be tipping him to get the upset. Right now, I'm kind of saying it's more 50-50. Welliver looks, like he's lost his desire, and he's happy to be used as a low output opponent these days. But you never know. If he's got pride, if he's got any desire, and now he's got a few weeks to prepare, it wouldn't surprise me if he put up some sort of a fight. Thanks for watching.